My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GBNews.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking today. Now, many people are struggling in society right now, but there are a group of people that are doing just fine. Thank you very much. The billionaires are who I'm talking about. Did you know there are now more of them in the UK than ever before? Some are saying this is the answer to things like the nurses' strike. Tax the billionaires more to give it to the nurses. Really, is that the answer? Is it as simple as straightforward as that? Give me your thoughts tonight. And Jeremy Clarkson, have you seen what he's been up to? He reckons, in his column anyway, that he hates Meghan Markle. I've got to say, there's been a lot of outrage about that tonight. I'll be telling you exactly what he said. And getting into this, do you think it's ever okay, basically, to say that you hate somebody? Is that just free speech, or is it a little bit hurtful? I don't know. I want your thoughts on that tonight. And speaking of hurtful, do schools need to do more to teach about the dangers of anti-Semitism? Would that work? Should you be pulling out? I don't know. One group of religious hatred versus another. How do you think schools should do all this, deal with it to get the right outcomes? And what on earth is going on with young men? I'm asking because the Office for National Statistics said that they are now the biggest group of people who are not in work. Why not? What's going on? Are you a young man? Do you work? Have you any intention of working? Give me your thoughts tonight. We'll have it all to come, but first up, let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and good evening to you. Our top story tonight concerns the Rwanda plan and the government and the developments of that today. And the Home Secretary has said in the House of Commons today she is committed to the Rwanda deportation plan after the High Court ruled it is lawful. Speaking in the Commons, Suella Braverman said the plan was humane and a practical alternative for those who come to the UK through dangerous and illegal routes. The Royal Courts of Justice ruled the policy was consistent with international refugee conventions, and charities have vowed to appeal today's decision, claiming the East African nation lacks a fair and efficient asylum system. The Home Secretary says we can't tolerate people coming here illegally.
Being relocated to Rwanda is not a punishment, but an innovative way of addressing a major problem to redress the imbalance between illegal and legal migration routes. It will also ensure that those in genuine need of international protection are provided with it in Rwanda.
23-year-old Gabrielle Hutchinson has become the second woman to die following a crowd crush outside the O2 Academy, Brixton, last Thursday. The Met Police says she was part of the security team working at the venue. The force also said 3 women who were actually critically injured were all in the foyer at the time of the accident. A third woman, aged 21, remains in a critical condition in hospital. That's all I have time for today. Now back to Michelle Dewberry.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, you lucky people, I am with you till 7 o'clock tonight, keeping me company alongside me right through all that way to the top of the show tonight. Serial entrepreneur David Tabasol. Good evening, welcome back. And I just asked you, didn't I, Frank Furedi, how'd you like to be introduced? There was a list as long as my arm then coming out of his mouth, everybody. Author, academic, sociologist, bit of everything on the panel tonight. And you know the drill, don't you? It's not just about us three here, it's about you at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? Get in touch with me, GBViews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at GBNews. And guess what? What a treat for you. Tonight, I've got a new tool. They've let me loose on a new bit of technology, so they have, because you're going to be able to see your own comments, everybody. How exciting. So do make sure that you're emailing me. gbviews at gbnews.uk is the email. Today is my penultimate day until I head off for Christmas as well. So do you know what I want to do before I leave? I want to see some of your festivities at home, so I do. I want to see, where are you going to be celebrating your Christmas? Show me your Christmas trees, your living rooms. You can email those to me, and I'll be doing a roundup of my favourite ones before I go off on holiday tomorrow. You'll have to put a hashtag on there, though, so just do hashtag GBNewsTrees. There you go. Did you get that? Hashtag GBNewsTrees, and I'll round up my favourites and I'll show you. We'll have a look at each other's Christmas trees before I head off tomorrow. But first up, I want to talk a lot about billionaires in just a second. I want to talk about hate, this whole notion of hate. Should you be able to even say that you hate somebody in this day and age? I talk about the Clarkson and Meghan Markle thing, but I'll get into that in just a second. But today, you might have noticed there was a court ruling, Polly's just been mentioning it, about saying that it's now lawful, actually, that people can be sent over to Rwanda. This is Frank Furedi. This is something that's been toing and froing, isn't it, for a long time. We'll touch on this very briefly before we get into the situation with wealth in this country. What do you reckon to this ruling today? A good idea or not?
Well, I think it makes sense because I think courts have got to follow Parliament. They made a decision on it. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with the decision. All I would say is that although legally it's absolutely right that this should continue, I don't think the policy itself is going to make the slightest bit of difference. It's a very expensive policy that will impact on the margins, but it's not going to stop migration in any serious sense.
Well, it's not as expensive as putting people up in 4-star hotels imminently. If you ask me, we'll be at 5-star hotels at this rate. David Tabasol, where do you stand on it?
Well, I agree that it's really important that the courts have followed our democratic institutions, but it's going to cost between £12,000 and £24,000 per migrant to, if you like, export them to Rwanda, which is going to cost a lot of money. The real issue is this going to disincentivise either the people smugglers, who I think are effectively cultural and human terrorists, or indeed the uninformed migrants from coming over here? No. The truth of this is misdirection, isn't it?
Well, it'd deter me. If my mate was FaceTiming me initially from, I don't know, a 4-star hotel somewhere saying to me, oh, Michelle, get on the boat, look how good it is. And then all of a sudden I wanted to head for Rotherham and I found myself inadvertently shipped over to Rwanda, that would deter me from telling my mates to come and join me, because that's what's happening at the moment, isn't it? There's a lot of people, clearly, selling this kind of trip and all the rest of it to their friends and their peers or whatever it is in places like Albania, and so on and so forth we go.
But if you have a dream, that's not going to end just because you get this bit of news. If you dream about coming to Britain, I think you're going to follow your instincts no matter what. And
but if you dream about coming to Britain and you inadvertently end up in Rwanda, then surely that's a disincentive.
But I don't agree that these people will be FaceTiming anybody. I mean, you've got to be pretty disconnected from the media to be desperate enough to get on a dinghy. This isn't...
Oh, David, I like you. I really like you. But these people are not disconnected from the media to get on a dinghy, because a lot of this trade is peddled on things like TikTok, which is a huge form of media, certainly for younger people.
They know far more about media than we do, so I don't think there's any disconnection. The reality is if you talk to some of these young guys, they're desperate to come here because they want a better life. And although they might be thwarted because they might end up in Rwanda, that will not stop the majority of people coming through, unfortunately.
I will say this, though. Arsenal, my team, my football team that I love, sponsored with a shirt that says "Visit Rwanda."
Yes.
And Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, routinely criticises the performance of the Arsenal team. So I will say this, 12 grand a person, maybe we can assign a replacement for Gabriel Jesus.
I think Arsenal's got problems anyways. As a Spurs fan,
Excuse me, this is not match of the day, you two. Well, have you know, thank you very much. Listen, what do you think about that whole situation with Rwanda? To me personally, it'll all come down to whether or not this government has a backbone and actually has it in them to create a plane full of people and send them over to Rwanda. We can go around the houses, but until that actually happens, all of it is irrelevant. Give me your thoughts, GBViews at gbnews.uk. Let's talk cash, shall we? We all know by now that there is a cost of living crisis that's affecting pretty much everyone right now, but, and there is a but, because the number of billionaires in this country has risen to record levels. Many are now saying that this is where the answer lays. If you want to, for example, give the nurses a pay rise, etc., take it off the billionaires. Let's create a wealth tax. Is it that simple? I'll start with you, Frank Furedi. A wealth tax.
Well,
Yes.
I think it's a fool's errand. You know, the way the world works is not simply there's a fixed cake and you take it away from the billionaires and you give it to nurses. That doesn't happen. And what it does, it kind of creates a focus on redistributing already existing wealth rather than confronting the question of how do we increase the cake altogether so that working class people, public sector workers can get more resources, can get higher earnings. Now, I'm not in principle against a wealth tax, but the tax should be...
What does that mean? You're not in principle against a wealth tax?
Well, I'm for a wealth tax if it's not used to solve the kind of problems that we're trying to solve with it, because it wouldn't solve the problem of poverty, for example.
So you are in favour of a wealth tax?
In principle, only because it can be used quite effectively to invest. That money could be used to invest in infrastructure, in industry, which the country so desperately needs. But there's a trade-off, because if you go too high with the tax, then that acts as a disincentive to many people. They will they will not be working there, all the time, and they will not be investing here in Britain. So there's a danger that a good wealth tax turns into its very opposite, because it has a diminishing impact upon the public purse.
Well, let me speak to a very wealthy young man. He couldn't make it today, so I'll speak to you instead, David Tabsell. I'm only kidding. David Tabsell, you are a very successful businessman. You created businesses which have gone onto the stock market and had billion-dollar valuations. You know a thing or two about entrepreneurialism, about what motivates the wealthy and all the rest of it. First and foremost, do you think it's a good indicator that we've got a rising number of billionaires in this country?
Well, it's a bit like having a lot of Olympic gold medalists. Yes, there's 177 billionaires. There's 2,700 dollar billionaires on the planet. We should want more of them, because billionaires typically are people who have done really well, often locally, providing jobs, boosts to the economy, and we should aspire to be like them. And here's the thing about billionaires anyway. If you say we're going to give you massively high wealth taxes, where the money you've paid income tax on and national insurance, your companies have paid tax, now we're going to take what you thought was yours and we're going to reduce it over time. These people are economic tourists in reality. They're just going to go away. They're just going to disappear.
But is that just the myth that's peddled? Because when people say tax the wealthy more, the wealthy will go, oh, we'll leave, or they'll leave. Really? Do they leave?
Yes.
Do they?
I know several billionaires that have left. They go to, some will go to countries just without wealth tax. That's why people used to come to Britain, because there was no wealth tax and you had the non-dom rules. Or you can go to places like Ireland, or you can go to places like Malta, or the Channel Islands, or Swiss. You can go all kinds of places.
That's only some of them. I think that if you're like a Russian or a Middle Eastern oligarch living here, you will leave, no doubt about it. But a lot of people regard Britain as a very good place to invest in, no matter what. It's a really good sort of economic site for very rich people to make their way in the world. They like the quality of life. And when you talk to people who are internationally in the upper income bracket, they regard Britain as a really, really nice place to hang out in.
Used to.
I think it still is. I mean, rich people don't go to Munich to have a good time.
What do you call a rich person, Frank?
They do.
I think somebody over $10, $12 million. You have to remember, a billionaire these days is the equivalent to a millionaire in the 1980s, given the inflated values, and the value of money is no longer what it was 20, 30 years ago. So we don't have the kind of billionaires we used to have in such large numbers. What we have is a lot of people who are like the old millionaires, but they're not are able to call themselves billionaires because of the fact that the value of money has been really devalued.
Yeah, and I think what I find fascinating is about a lot of this conversation, I do feel it is quite a lot of politics of envy, as this was a big piece in The Guardian today, and there's been a lot of strategies that have been talked about as to how to take money from the so-called elite, the wealthy and all the rest of it. But they never really seem to take account of the fact that actually these people, they employ a great deal of people, so they create huge income for a variety of different families. They pay a lot of tax already. They do kind of have a lot of responsibility for innovation in this country as well. So to me, the kind of positives, if you like, of those people are overlooked often.
Look, the simple fact is, the headline is for the 177 billionaires. The NHS costs 180 billion a year. So what you're going to end up with is, you're not going to, whatever you tax them, what, you're going to take all their money off them? They've got an average of $2 billion of net wealth each. You can't take all their money. If you certainly threaten to do that, they certainly all would go. What actually happens with these taxes is you introduce a tax for the supernormal profits, or the wealth tax for the super rich, and then it dribbles down until all of us are paying wealth tax. We pay wealth tax anyway in this country, all of us. We pay inheritance tax. The government, when you die, the government takes 40% of your wealth.
I don't think you should pay inheritance tax. I don't think inheritance tax should be a thing.
But that is a wealth tax. What happens is you pay your taxes, you pay your VAT, you pay your national insurance, you pay your contributions, you pay your corporations tax, and then the money you've got left you put into a house. And what they want to do, if they're going to introduce wealth tax, this is what Corbyn was hinting at, we're going to take 1%, 2% or 3% of that a year if you're worth more than a few. I don't want to live in a country like that. I want to live in an aspirational country where we pay our taxes, yes, for the roads and the health service, and we get on and we all become richer.
If you're a billionaire and someone takes an extra 1% off you, which is what one of the proposals is, a 1%, as you say, what's 1% going to do if you're that rich?
Well, it's not going to raise an awful lot of money then either, the administration of it, but it also sends a signal. It sends a signal that Britain isn't about making money and rewarding you and being a place where the money you've earned, you pay tax on, is yours. It says, we're taking your money. It's a sleeping charge. It's a very, very, very depressing move for an entrepreneurial country.
Well, I'm going to test this. This is my first time testing this. I'm going to press a button, everyone. I hope I don't blow up the entire system and take GBNews off air. But hang on, let me show you what Carol says. Is Carol there? Oh, yes. There you go, that's Carol. Cool, blimey, if you can read that on your screen, everyone, you've got better specs than me. Carol says, tax them. She's talking about the wealthy. We're always told that if we do that, they'll leave. Really? She says, we've got high taxes now. How can a decent person, a decent thinking person accept it's right to earn so much money when others have nothing? See, Carol, you intrigue me there, because when you say, how can a decent thinking person accept it's right to earn so much money when others have nothing, do you think it's a responsibility of person A, let's say the wealthy, to accept and assume responsibility for person B, i.e., using your words, those people that have nothing? I find that kind of notion. What do you think to that, Frank?
Well, I think it's very divisive, first of all. Basically, it implies that my future, my wealth, my well-being depends on taking stuff away from you or diminishing the amount of income that you have. And that's the problem with the current discussion. The reason why people are proposing a wealth tax is because on paper and on the media it looks really good that we're kind of making these people who don't deserve to have all that much money pay for it. And there's a strong ideological driver behind this. And I think a lot of people believe that somehow the very fact that they're not well off is the consequence of you or me or anybody else having a good income, and it doesn't really work like that. In fact, the more people that have a high level of income are around, the more they're able to provide the tax basis for people who are on very low incomes to get by and have a decent standard of living.
Indeed. James, I bring James up here. Look, the first conversation we were having earlier on about the whole Rwanda thing, James says, have you seen the glamorous setup in Rwanda awaiting those migrants? You say they're more like apartments on Malibu Beach, and just look at the lovely bedrooms, he says.
Nice weather.
Huh?
It's nice weather there.
What, in Rwanda?
It's a bit humid.
Anywhere is quite nicer weather than here at the moment, isn't it, I suspect? Also, look, we're talking about, what's this? Paddy, you say don't give nurses a pay rise, just raise the tax threshold on their wages so it equals a 20% rise in real terms. That's Paddy's idea there in terms of what you could do. In fact, actually, you give me a good idea there, Paddy. I'm going to take a very quick break. When I come back, I'm going to ask these two just a quick question in terms of what they think they should do, what we should do in terms of the nurses, in terms of pay rises, how much, how can we draw this kind of situation to a close? So put your thinking caps on, gents. I'll come back in just a couple of minutes with that.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewbs, keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. Alongside me, entrepreneur David Tabasol and the author, academic and sociologist Frank Furedi. Good evening, gents. Welcome back. We've just been talking about wealth tax. Bernard says, why do lower earners always want richer people to pay more tax? This is a Labour idea to appease the Labour supporters. That says Bernard. Richard says a wealth tax is utterly immoral. People have paid tax on their wealth already. And John, you're not beating around the bush. John, you say the idea that the wealthy can pay for the profligacy of the rest of us is untenable. So he says, you've got a round of applause there, one of you, off David. The whole concept of this wealth tax we were talking about, should we take from the wealthy to give to people like the nurses? How do we fix the situation with the nurses?
It's got nothing to do with the billionaires. They've already paid,
I know, but I've moved on.
They've paid their tax, so you shouldn't take away their wealth unless they want to give it.
So what do you think about the nurses then?
Well, what the nurses need here, and what we need to do here generally with pay rises to get rid of all these strikes, is actually look at the people in any class of workers that we're dealing with. So with the nurses, they're going to have an average wage of X. I don't know what I'm afraid I'm so.
It's about 33,000.
So say you're on 33 grand a year, and you're working really hard, and the nurses are incredibly important. What we need to do is make their life easier. So I think from next year they should have inflation-linked pay rises. In the meantime, the stuff they're spending their money on, heating and fuel and everything else that they are spending their money on, should in some way, I believe, we should have 1 or 2 years of government payments to help. So if you can't afford essential things to get you by and you're working, I think the government owes you that. And I really, we shouldn't just be handing out all these subsidies to everybody and all these pay rises. But the nurses and the critical services, they come first. I would just pay them the rate of inflation right now and review it every year.
Yeah, but right now, by the way, they've asked for 19%, which is inflation plus 5. Frank, where do you stand on it?
Well, I think the problem is that there is no short-term solution I think we wasted a lot of money during the lockdown. We just kind of printed money in a very, very silly way. And yet we have to do something to improve the position of nurses, particularly in the National Health Service. I think the solution lies in ensuring that nurses are valued more. I mean, we pay a lot of lip service to that, but most nurses that I talk to make the point that they don't feel that they are at all valued and that their profession is going from bad to worse. So the things that I would do is nurses, when they go to university, have got to pay regular university fees. And I would argue that if you go to university, you're getting a degree, you don't have to pay your fees if you stay in the National Health Service for a certain number of years. I think that would be a huge plus for especially the younger nurses who are paying a very high rate of interest on the fees they got to pay back. The second thing that I would do, which is I think really quite important, is to, in a sense, take the culture of nursing a little bit more seriously and to create an environment where nurses have more opportunities to be trained, to be educated, to have a greater variety of career options than they have at the moment.
Yeah, and we could, you can also do stuff creatively as well, to your point. So what about, I don't know, setting a new thing that actually nurses and NHS staff don't have to pay to park in their places of work?
Absolutely,
you could do that. You could set up something that if you're in the public sector, I don't know, you could, and Paddy alluded to this earlier on in his email, you could raise the personal tax threshold, so you could play around with things, actually.
You could give them a free train pass, for example.
A free train pass?
To go to work.
Yeah, a lot. Don't forget as well, you do get the blue light card, don't you, if you work for the NHS, so you do get lots of discounts in places already. Anyway, keep your thoughts on that topic coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email address. Now, Jeremy Clarkson, he's upset a lot of people. You know who he is. He's the former Top Gear host. Long story short, he published, or should I say he wrote a column that was published this weekend saying I quote, this is a direct quote, he hates Meghan Markle on a cellular level. He went on to say that he dreams about her essentially being dragged through the streets naked, having excrement thrown at her, apparently. I say apparently because I've never seen a single episode of it. Apparently, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you will know that that is a scene from the hit TV series. Never, ever, ever seen a single episode of it. I've no intention of starting now. But anyway, it's really upset a lot of people. This is a free country. Was he allowed to say what he said? Should he have been able to say what he said, Frank?
Absolutely. I think that it's perfectly okay to hate. I mean, I'm sure that everybody in this room hates something, and a lot of people are hesitant about expressing their hatred for certain phenomena because these days, the very emotion of hate, which is a very natural human emotion, has been criminalized in a number of areas, unfortunately, in society. Myself, I think the reaction to Clarkson is worse than what Clarkson did. Because Clarkson just wrote a stupid article. He expressed himself in a very clumsy, unhelpful kind of a way. It was really bad journalism, very childish, very infantile. But the reaction to it, you know, I'm offended, I'm hurt, I'm traumatized, that becomes the norm. And if we allow a situation where people's emotional reaction to articles and other kind of communications can be used to force people to censor their words, or to write differently, then we got a big problem. And I was really disappointed that Clarkson, who I thought I had a bit of a backbone, then apologized. I think, you know, the apology rolling over under pressure is the norm.
He stopped shy of apologising. I'll read you what he said. He said this on Twitter. This is Clarkson. He went, "Oh dear." I put it on screen, by the way, in case you're watching, not listening. He says, "Oh dear. I'd rather put my foot in it." In a column, I wrote about Meghan, and I made a clumsy reference to a scene in Games of Thrones, and this has gone down badly with a great many people. I'm horrified to have caused so much hurt, and I shall be more careful in future. So he kind of stopped short, really. It wasn't full on, oh my God, I'm so sorry, was it?
It was a bit of an apology. I mean, Clarkson is very different than most people are. He's too self-centered to be totally apologetic. But nevertheless, I think that has gone a long way towards that. But he signals the message that because some people are upset by it, he has got to censor his ideas. He's got to talk differently. I, as a sociologist, offend people all the time. That's part of my job, is to offend people, to question and to criticize. If every time people react against my words, I'm going to hide in a cave and apologize, then I think my life as an academic, as an intellectual, is going to be short-circuited, and it becomes a really boring public life that I have to lead.
I've got a question for you, but in a second, I'll come back to you. David, where do you stand on it all?
Well, he apologised, and I think his main apology should actually be for that it was a poorly written and unfunny article. I think he meant well, it just wasn't funny. And it's very easy to be a playground bully, and I think it's the kind of... We all make, you know, I work in comedy and as a producer, and I can tell you that it's really easy when you're drunk around the kitchen table to just mouth off, and and your partner might go, or your kids might go, "That's no good, Dad," and you go, "Oh yeah, right,"
Mm-hmm.
and you might, nobody did that this time, and I just want to actually, I want to say something on a human level. One of my best friends and my producing partner, and a great satirist called Victor Lewis Smith, died last week very suddenly, and he wrote a fake obituary about Jeremy Clarkson. And, you know, he said, we're sad to lose Mr. Clarkson, who was known and famed primarily for prizing a 42-inch waist into 24-inch jeans, a practice that led to him being known as the human toffee apple. Now, to me, that's affectionately satirical. And the hate that we got this time, and the laziness, Meghan herself says, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I tell you, don't let not good enough allow you to write articles that are meant to be funny. But, you know, he's apologised.
But funny is such a, like a subjective... Because I don't really find, no offence to you, but I don't really find comedians funny, with perhaps the exception of Peter Kay. I struggle to find a comedian that makes me laugh. So when I see a lot of this stuff, it doesn't make me chuckle at all, but nor would it make me go, "Oh, that's an awful thing to say, don't do that." Yeah. And when you say you're an academic, Frank, so, you know, you upset people or you offend people all the time, would you deliberately seek to offend?
No, I think that's pointless. I mean, you might try to deliberately offend your enemy, somebody who really dislikes you, and you're trying to fight back. But in general, I think being sensitive and being nice to people is usually the first recourse. But nevertheless, there are some ideas that are so important to articulate that you have to do it, even though you understand that it's going to really upset people. So, for example, I actually agree with Clarkson's content of what he's saying. I think that, you know, Meghan and the whole phenomenon, it seems to me to be a real problem, that kind of therapeutic princess who, in a sense, is parasitic on the emotion of the public. I totally get that. The trouble is, you don't want to express that in such a clumsy kind of, childish kind of a way. And if you are going to criticize somebody who is held in high esteem by a section of the population, you got to choose your word, you know, forensically, so that you can, in a sense, take the piss. You can really kind of challenge them, but in a way that is articulate and clear and funny.
Take the mick. That's the word we use.
I'm sorry.
Take the mick.
My vocabulary is not the most sophisticated.
He's from Hungary.
Well, yeah, luckily I'm not, so I'm on it and I'm across.
Sorry, yeah.
Right, lots of you guys.
I apologise.
That's all right. I'll just kick you and I'll just cancel you anyway. I'll just get rid of him, cancel him. I'm just pressing my button furiously to share some of your thoughts. Betty says... Well, I don't know what you just said, Betty, because I pressed my button and I don't know where you've gone now. I'm not a lover of Harry and Meghan, but what Jeremy said is despicable. That's Carol. I don't know who Betty is. Oh, there's Betty. Michelle, actions speak louder than words. Silly, comical comment from Clarkson. But if anyone should be in trouble, it's Meghan Markle. Oh, really? I mean, we could open that entire can of worms about Meghan Markle and Harry, but you know what? I'm not going to lie. I'm not that interested in the whole thing. I still haven't even watched all of that. I still haven't watched that whole documentary. There's a new one I've seen today, isn't there? A new series or whatever it is coming out now. Justin says, I bet all the people who disagree with Jeremy now hate him. Hypothetical keyboard warriors. Oh, hypocritical, he means. Hypocritical, I'm having it shouting in my ears. Justin apparently didn't say hypothetical. He said hypocritical. Hey, we're learning. Look, we're learning together, aren't we? Now, you know, the pressure's on, by the way. If you're going to email me, the pressure to spell things properly, the pressure, because now you know your emails are going to be on screen. The pressure is well and truly on. Jane says, hang on a minute, Michelle. No one spoke out when Jo Bratton said that she wished someone essentially would throw acid at people like Nigel Farage. Yes, indeed. I remember that. TikTok, many of you guys are saying to the nurses, get a pay reduction for doing all of their TikTok dances. Oh, that's harsh, Denise. What about morale, motivation? Maybe they might just need to offload for a couple of minutes and practice their dancing. Jeremy Clarkson basically reaps what he sows. I don't know. Do you think he's that bothered? I've got to say, I do think he stopped shy of doing a full-on apology. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Watch your spelling, everyone, because it'll be broadcast to the nation. So, well, now that I've got the hang of pressing a button, it was quite an advanced level, but I got there in the end. Going to take a quick break. I'll continue the conversation about the whole kind of hate speech thing. Do you think the dangers of anti-Semitism should be taught in schools? I'll tell you what I'm asking in a couple of minutes, but give me your thoughts and I'll see you in 2.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight, as Rwanda flights get the green light from the High Court, could this be the turning point in the migrant crisis? Or will lefty saboteurs strike again? Plus, one of the world's most fearless commentators, Andrew Tate, gives his unmissable verdict on the Harry and Meghan saga. Plus, there's unfiltered opinion from Lawrence Fox, and Matt Letizia tackles World Cup virtue signaller Gary Neville. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, the entrepreneur David Tabasol and the author, academic and sociologist Frank Furedi. Lots of you guys getting in touch. I can tell you the thing that's got you guys talking today is still this wealth tax thing. Shane says you don't need to tax the wealthy. To raise billions of pounds, simply close all the loopholes that they use to avoid tax. Melvin says a lot of people work hard to be where they are, and if you don't like it, why don't you work hard instead of moaning about that? Julia says, Michelle, my answer to Carol, that was one of my earlier viewers, says that billionaires have often taken risks, they've created jobs and they have earned it. There you go. Let me know your thoughts on, what's this? Someone here about Jeremy Clarkson. There's something very worrying about what is in Clarkson's woman-disliking weird mind. God blimey. Another man saying it was a joke when it totally wasn't. Carol says that was not an apology. He said it was a mistake just because people were offended. So still saying in a way he meant it. He doesn't regret it. And then she says, Clarkson isn't funny. There you go. Do you think it's funny? Let me know. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? The government's advisor on anti-Semitism says that school children must be taught about anti-Jewish prejudice. This becomes amid a spike in anti-Semitic hate crimes. Apparently, it's not enough to teach about the Holocaust. Modern-day anti-Semitism must also be discussed as well. David, where do you stand on this?
Right. Well, as you probably may know, I'm Jewish. I don't practice, but I'm proud of my Jewish heritage. Both my parents were refugees from the Nazis, and recently I did my family tree. And between 1918 and 1942, from the previous generations, 24,000 people in the family tree, 23,800 and something were murdered. And that's just there. And I've been to Auschwitz, and I've lived with this all my life. And my parents, when I was brought up, said to me, "Oh, no, we'll put up Christmas tree. We'll put up Christmas tree. We eat ham. Don't tell anyone you're Jewish." And what's happened is this became acceptable because it was taught in schools. But since the internet has smashed the narrative offered by governments and the BBC and state broadcasters, and we know, in every country, we now have a free-for-all out there. And you know what? It's all coming back. There are 200,000 Jewish people in this country, and yet they're being blamed for everything from the invention of COVID to controlling the banks. And the same's going on in the States. Hate of all groups, hate, scapegoating, is the enemy of democracy. It's the enemy of evolution. We have to be taught, and we have to be allowed to role-play it. This has to be done for every creed, every colour, every religion. And we have to stop this irritatingly woke, weird criticism of cultural appreciation. I really applaud that actor who is showing people how effective a fascist dictator can be on stage. We have to educate. If you don't empathise with cruelty, if you don't inhabit the body of the person being abused, how do you know how they feel? Honestly, I urge every single school person in Britain should be taken to concentration camps so they understand what all this is about. It's not enough merely to have a paragraph shown to you.
Right, where do you stand on that, Frank?
Yeah, I kind of fundamentally disagree with that. I think that anti-Semitism is a huge problem, and it's growing all the time. So I wouldn't want to minimize it, and it's a real threat to the democracy within our society. And I do worry about it quite a bit. But as an educator, I know that whenever we're trying to put every problem onto the curriculum. So, if there's a problem with money, then kids have got to learn about financial management. If there's a problem with relationship, they have to have relationship education. If there's a problem with racism or anything else, they have to be taught that. But the trouble is that never works.
So if there's a problem with hygiene in hospital...
Can I finish?
Yeah, let him finish his point. Go on.
So the way you deal with the problem of anti-Semitism and all forms of xenophobia or racism is by providing children with quality education. And if people read right kind of literature, if they read the Diary of Anne Frank, if they read about how the world has worked, if they learn about history, about what has happened to people that have been oppressed, then it seems to me that that's how you develop the sensitivity and the understanding and the intellectual independence you need to ward against all this horrible stuff.
But then you're agreeing, though, aren't you?
Because... No, we're not agreeing, because I would not make the teaching of anti-Semitism as a distinct subject.
But you're not Jewish, are you?
I am.
You are. So you're Jewish.
And my family got wiped out in the Holocaust.
And you don't. So this is fascinating. So you, to me, this is even more interesting. You're actually still in the mindset of my parents. Don't talk about.
No, I didn't say that. I talk about it all the time, and I've never denied anything about my background and my legacy. I'm a big believer in flaunting it. At every opportunity. But what I don't want to do is to create a situation where we turn schools into factories of indoctrination, which is what we're doing. I want to deal with anti-Semitism amongst children by really educating them to think for themselves.
But that, Frank, is what I was saying.
Well, no, you were saying, you talked, instead about going to Auschwitz, you talked about learning about the Holocaust. And it doesn't work. I've seen kids, I've been to Auschwitz, and I've seen kids go to Auschwitz. And for them, this is like a nice day out.
No.
And they laugh saying, "Oh yeah, I've seen kids giggling."
I've been to Auschwitz as well. When you go there, I mean, it strikes you the second you go there. When you see those train lines.
It does you. But a lot of young people who really just been taken there regard this as a day out. And I've seen, when I went there with some scholars to this, because we had a seminar there on anti-Semitism, I was struck by the fact that a lot of the young kids they were just giggling and they were laughing, and for them it was like going down to Brighton for the day or somewhere else.
That's poor teaching, because if I was a school teacher and I took some children to a gas chamber and they was messing around and giggling,
absolutely,
I'm telling you, there'd be in an awful lot of trouble.
Yeah, so it's poor teaching, but it's more than that. It's because those young kids haven't learned the importance of taking racism, oppression seriously. They haven't learned that from the
But
curriculum.
Isn't that the point? The point is, it's not just a visit to Auschwitz that will teach you this. It's not just learning about anti-Semitism. It's also about learning about slavery. It's learning about prejudice. It's learning about hate. It's learning about the war that ended the modern Yugoslavia. It's actually. All I am saying is we have to. The British educational system needs to actively teach about the dangers of racism, including the Holocaust. And one of the things is, I think, all children, if possible, of the future generations, one of the additional measures is to go to a concentration camp to see this is real. Because there's so much counter-information on the internet, so many Holocaust deniers out there.
Yeah, but you see, kids are not learning to think for themselves, either in schools or universities. I think the educational system we have in this country is pedagogically very feeble, and you have basically kids coming out and just repeating things. They're kind of being taught to exam, to do well in examination. And my worry is that if you have a generation of young people who haven't become intellectually self-sufficient, they will not be in a position to know how to think critically, how to react to an anti-Semitic comment.
But of course you're right. But it's as well as, not instead of, surely.
Well, that's the key. Unless there is young people or independent thinkers, they can go to Auschwitz 20 times, and that's going to make the slightest bit of difference.
Well, as well as, yes. Have you had any anti-Semitism?
Quite a lot.
What was the worst you've had?
Well, it's being referred to as those people. It's the euphemism. And whenever I hear something like that, I try to educate them. But the way I educate them is not by talking to them about Auschwitz, but making them feel humiliated about the fact that they are so despicable despite all the evidence of history. But I think at the end of the day...
How does that work for you?
I think, I'm reasonably confident of what I'm doing. The thing that I'm really concerned about is we're loading the curriculum with all kinds of political problems rather than teaching children, good literature, good history, all the things that they need to be sensitive to these kinds of issues. And if you just merely give them, political problems to think about, then we desensitize them from discriminating, from knowing what is right and what is wrong. And that's the approach that I would take.
Well, there you go. You've had two approaches. What's your approach? What would you do? I've got to say, I, as a child, went to Eden War Camp. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. All these years on, I can still remember, and I promise you, I cannot remember much from my time at school, but I can certainly remember that visit and the emotions that it conjured up for me. Let me know your thoughts on the conversation. I found that fascinating. I could have just sat and listened to that for much longer, I can tell you now. Give me your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'll have some of your responses, and also, as well, I want to talk about young men. What's going on? Why don't they want to work? Tell me your thoughts. I'll see you in 2.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Right through till 7 o'clock tonight, entrepreneur David Tabersall keeps me company, as does the author, academic and sociologist Frank Furedi. Well, I can tell you what, we're just having a very interesting conversation just then about anti-Semitism. Darren, let me just share some of your thoughts. Darren, we're talking about whether or not it should be on the curriculum. Darren says, he is right. I've got two he's, though. Don't know which one you mean's right. Good education and reading stops the misinformed spouting nonsense. You can't have a lesson on the curriculum for every problem. Keith says, there didn't seem to be that much anti-Semitism in this country until it raised its head in the Labour Party. Phil says, sure, kids a Schindler's List film as part of their education. Leslie says, I read The Diary of Anne Frank when I was 13. It still affects me now. I'm in my 60s. What a tragedy. And I like this one as well from Philip. He says, Michelle, there's only one thing you ever need to teach children, and it's called respect. I'll tell you what I am going to look for as well, because I think I got some less than favourable comments, actually, as I was going through that, and it's hard for me to keep up. But I am going to have a look, and actually, if there were insulting comments, I'm perhaps going to find one, if that's OK with you two. Sure. Because I don't believe in insulting. I don't believe in being disrespectful. I believe in respectful disagreement. And if you don't have that in you, well, let's have it out. That's what I say. So I'm going to keep my eyes open while we're just having this next conversation. But for now, let's talk about young men, because apparently figures from the Office for National Statistics show that among 18 to 24-year-olds, the rate of economic inactivity is almost 32%. For men, it's even higher. It's gone past 32. It's 32.3%. What's going on? Let's cut to the chase. Frank, young men, what's happening?
I think there are a number of factors. Number one, we devalue the culture of work. And work is no longer seen as a creative way of making your way in the world, a way of gaining control, but it's seen as somehow a drag because it interferes with your social life. And that's the message that young people are getting. I think matters were made much worse during lockdown, when people were told that working at home is just as valuable, just as good as working in an office or in a factory. And what that missed out was that when you go to work in an office, you interact, you create a kind of common culture, you get a buzz that you don't get in your digital bedroom. And when a lot of young guys hear this anti-work ethos, anti-work sensibility, it becomes something they readily internalize. And one of the things that I've noticed happening with a lot of young men is that they've been almost like kind of detached from public life by the kind of cultural norms that have been introduced. So a lot of them are almost on the margins of society and regard themselves as somehow able to get by because mom and dad will help out, the social will provide a bit of resources. And the only thing we can do to solve the problem is to raise the culture of work. And also, very important, and this is something I feel very passionate about, we got to have high quality apprenticeships within our society. Young people have got to learn about work practically at a very early age. Our apprentice system is really, really an embarrassment. If you compare it to the Germans, for example, or even to the Scandinavians, you'll find that being an apprentice is seen really, really seriously. And where I live in Kent, I know of 3 young boys who've just turned 18, and they just got their first apprenticeships, and they become transformed. I mean, they're now young men rather than just merely boys.
Well, I did an apprenticeship, and I'm always talking about the virtues of that. David, where do you stand on it all?
I think that A lot of this is down to the schism in society that came with COVID. I think people sitting at home, we've got a Zoom-based culture, and I think young men have also had their gender roles annihilated in the changes we're going through. They don't know who they are, they don't know what's going on. They've missed maybe 2 or 3 years of active education and society. And my experience is that women, younger women, they mature faster and know their roles in terms of how they study and adapt to work. And men between 18, 22, 23 are finding themselves. And I think if you take away what I'm seeing now is a fall in testosterone. We're seeing we're seeing less drinking, we're seeing less fighting, we're seeing less. What is it to be a man now? It's very, very, very strange.
Well, that is a huge question, and I think I'm not going to answer that, I don't think, before 7 o'clock. But what is it to be a man? I tell you what I always found fascinating, by the way, I bet everyone could define what a man is. All these people that dabble around trying to tie themselves up in knots because they can't explain a woman, I bet they could all explain what a man is. Peter says, Michelle, not all Jews are central bankers, but what percentage of central bankers are Jews? What do you think to that, Eugene?
Well, Adolf Hitler said that not every Jew is a communist, but every communist is a Jew. And that's kind of an indirect way of basically slandering a whole people. So the point is that if you think of Jews as being central bankers or somehow disproportionately involved in banking, what you have is this fantasy image of a small group of people that somehow control the world through financial means.
Yeah, and this is the reason I chose to read that comment out, because we've had literally a fantastic response to that conversation that you've had. But I just wanted to highlight that one. Colin says, I can't believe this kind of prejudice still happens against our Jewish population. I've got to say, I agree with you. Final thought to you, David. I've only got a few seconds now before the end of my programme.
On anti-Semitism?
On anything you want.
Well, to be honest with you, when somebody asks what percentage of what are Jews, I have to say, what percentage of people that would ask that are racists? And the answer is 100%.
Well, there you go. That's
well
all
said.
That's all due, Peter. So on that note, I'll end. Thank you very much, chaps. I very much enjoyed this conversation tonight, and I know my viewers have too. We do respectful disagreement, respectful debate on this show. I can tell you that now. Lawrence Fox, what have you got for us up at 7?
Hi, Dewbs. Tonight we have Rwandan refugees, Clarkson's hate speech, and vaccine harms.
Oh, well, mixed bag. Look forward to that. Do not forget, everyone, Lawrence, we'll see you at 7. Tonight is my penultimate night before Christmas. I want to see some of your Christmas trees, my new tool.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. After a pretty gloomy Monday, brighter skies for most on Tuesday, still fairly breezy, a little cooler, but still temperatures are going to be above average and way above where they were this time last week. Wet and windy spells coming courtesy of this area of low pressure, sending weather fronts our way, bringing quite heavy rain through the evening and overnight across southern England, where we do have a Met Office yellow rain warning in place. That rain at times affecting South Wales up towards the Midlands and across to the east, whereas much of northern Britain looking largely dry through the night, although there will be more showers to come across the Highlands and the Western Isles, where it stays pretty blustery. It's going to stay very mild across the south and the east. Elsewhere, well, we could see some pockets of frost with some clearer skies, but generally a bright day tomorrow. It will start a bit grey and dank over East Anglia and the southeast, but the rain here should be gone by mid-morning. Plenty of showers for the west of Northern Ireland and the northwest of Scotland, where there'll be snow on the hills. 1 or 2 showers for western parts of England and Wales. But for many, it's a dry and a bright Tuesday with sunny spells. Temperatures, as I say, not as high as Monday, but still above average at 9 to 11 Celsius. Temperatures will dip away a little bit on Tuesday evening under largely clear skies, but then we look at another chunk of rain coming in, turning things pretty soggy as we head through the early hours across much of England and Wales. Some uncertainty about the timing of when this will come in and clear away from the east on Wednesday. It'll be followed by brighter skies and showers. Plenty of showers for northwest England, Wales, and lots of showers for western Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's still pretty gusty here as well. Temperatures just drop down a little, but still double digits across the south is a little above average for the time of year. So temperatures, as I say, not as high as Monday, but still reasonably mild. Signs of things turning colder in the run-up to Christmas, at least across the north. Bye for now.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.